The actual beginning history of it was my first year as a faculty member. And I got a call from Vic, who owned Easy Street, and he wanted to do some kind of thing with jazz upstairs at what is now called, I think, Grumpy Dave's. And it wasn't called that then. It was just probably just about the best music room in the city. They had something going on there 6 nights a week, I believe. From Mondays were like an open mic night. I can't remember what was Tuesdays. It eventually became Wednesdays were jazz night. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they would hire like regional rock bands, people that would come in from Detroit or Ann Arbor or whatever. So, and it had a vibe because there was that constant thing going on up there, and people just came into that place. It was usually packed to the gills. So I remember he called me, and I really didn't want to, at that time, be in charge of like farming out. It didn't dawn on me at that time, that we could use this as something for our faculty. So I put it in the hands of some students. And that first group of students included like Michael Pope, who was a Bowling Green native, but now he teaches at Berkeley. He's an incredible bassist. And so the students in the early years were doing this at Easy Street. And I still had a pretty busy career even during the week playing, so I wasn't always there during the first few years of it because I was traveling still, going back and forth to Detroit, Columbus, Cleveland, playing every night practically. Come home tired as all get out and teach during the day here. But sort of in the early 90s, whenever I could, by the way, I was there, and I would hang out and play with the students. The goal of that wasn't so much that it was a gig, because if I remember correctly, on the early nights you played for the door, but the room was so packed that the door was great, and so our students would get an idea of like what it is to actually make some money playing music, and then I would come in and interact with them, and faculty members would. Eventually, about, maybe 10 years into it, we started alternating. And the faculty began playing there on a regular basis. And then we would have a student group play there, And it was really a booming scene for quite a while. And I can't quote you exactly how many years we were there at Easy Street. But when they made the transition to Grumpy Dave's, we were still doing it, but by then it wasn't a music every night room. And so the crowds were not coming into that the way they were, And so eventually it became this sort of thing where it wasn't really generating any income. And so there have always been a few little periods in the history of these 40 years where there might have been a month or two off. But the cool thing is, my colleague Roger Shoup, who has since passed, he was our drummer, took the bull by the horns, and at some point he felt like, and we all did, there was a little bit of a void, and so he found us other places. And for a while, we were at upstairs at what was the Cucina di Beto. For a while, the Di Benedetto's opened up a restaurant, an Italian restaurant, and they had an upstairs bar, and we played there. And that was great. It wasn't necessarily conducive to our students, I don't think, And that's what Easy Street was so great for when in those early days, because it was just packed. We eventually settled at 149 downtown. Roger was friends with the owner at that time. And it was conducive because we could play up on that stage, and there was enough seating and room for everybody, and adults came in and students came in. And we packed that place quite a bit, and it was good. And then Amar Mufla, who owned the Clazel, bought that building. And he had us there for a little while, and then he thought, let's try it at the Clazel. And so we did. And that didn't work either. I mean, it was good, and he stuck with it for as long as he could. It was great. We played up there on the balcony, by the bar. And people would come in, but it's such a big space, it didn't feel, like close.
Sure.
And also, depending on where you're at, there are some people that come in that don't really understand what's going on, and they don't understand that it's not. The jazz has always, in clubs, has still been presented not only as entertainment but as art, and people understand that these musicians are there to be listened to, and not everybody in a crowd understands that. They just think they can, if you've been in a jazz club, there's a completely different vibe. And then Amar finally, he left town, and it just wasn't economically feasible for him to do it there. So we went back to 149 with the new owner, and that was my colleague Ariel negotiated that. In the meantime, along comes Eric Jones in his retirement, who studied guitar with Professor Kasler, and he started hanging out at Jazz Night. And he said, you know what, I want to open up a brewery, specifically for Jazz Night. So a different place to feature this, because he recognized, hey, this is like with this faculty playing and with the students coming up, this is a good thing, world-class entertainment right here in BG, So that's kind of an overall history of it, but it has evolved into the fact that we're playing, and then our students come out and they play. Sometimes we're playing with them, and they're getting the idea of this concept of community. That the jazz, all music should be like this, but it's a community of like-minded people who come together and collaborate. And you've got to have a real-world model outside of the university environment for it to be really successful. And I have noticed since we've been there, and with the current faculty we have, a lot of our students are growing tremendously as a result of it. It's a blessing.
BG Independent News is made possible with support from people like you. Help keep news in Bowling Green free and accessible to everyone by becoming a contributor today. Visit bgindependentmedia.org/support to help Bowling Green's best source for local news, arts coverage, reviews, opinions, campus information, and community updates.